Hello and welcome to my presentation on podcasts. My name is Christian Bonser. I decided to choose the podcast as a particular aspect of the recent assignment that I did on how the internet has had an impact on the radio sector as a whole. So I thought podcast was a particular interesting point of that, which I could delve into and expand upon. So I've chosen podcasts to do with my presentation. So in this presentation I'll be discussing how podcasts were created, so the technology that was used to create them, as well as where the name came from and how it was originally decided upon, what podcasts are, so what they do, why they're so popular, and what the good aspects of them are, as well as why podcasts could be seen as the future of radio. I'll be talking about that in the presentation. So podcast, the word was originally derived from the words iPod and broadcast, iPod being the technology in which it was used when they first came out. So everyone thought iPods were the only way to get a podcast when they were first released. They thought, oh, I have to have an iPod, otherwise I can't access it. But it wasn't the case. If you've got iTunes, you can just download it and listen to it through your computer, which you can do now, obviously. As well as lots of other things like a mobile phone, your tablet, and then streaming as well. You don't just have to download podcasts, you can stream them. And then broadcast obviously being the way in which radio is transmitted, so the words tied together, iPod, broadcast, podcast. Podcasts only exist because of the internet and iPods, so if it wasn't for the internet they wouldn't exist, because podcasts are a downloadable form of radio, some might say, arguably. And then obviously iPods were the original technology that we used for them, so without them they would never have really started with it. That's where the idea came from, that you could listen to it somewhere else without a radio, on your MP3 or on your iPod. And they're also a revolutionary form of radio, so they're certainly one for the future because of all the aspects that some might say is shunning radio out of the picture, live radio and things like that. Podcasts are easy to access, easy to create and easy to manage. They're easy to access because there are loads of different sites which have millions of podcasts. They're so popular now that you can virtually get any genre or particular type of podcast that you want to listen to, sports, comedy, drama, whatever you want. It's pretty much all out there because there's millions of podcasts being created and are uploaded to lots of different sites every day. They're easy to create, technology-wise. You can all use a computer and a microphone, and you can pretty much just record yourself and upload it. They're easy to manage as well because there's not tied down to any particular time. You can take as long as you want to do a podcast, and then edit it as much as you want until you're ready to put it out there to the world, and then they can listen to it. The valuable aspects of podcasts and why they're so popular, obviously they're downloadable. That's the whole point of podcasts, is that you don't have to listen to them then and there. They're downloadable, so you can listen to them whenever you want. They contain extras, like for instance the Ricky Gervais show contains a lot of extras. I downloaded season 1 the other day, and had the first interview with Carl Pilkington, who's obviously established himself through the Ricky Gervais show. And it was like how he was first employed and how Ricky Gervais got the idea to employ him, which I had no idea about if I hadn't downloaded that season, unknowingly receiving that extra bit of information. And also there's no regulation, so people are free to express their views through podcasts in any way they want, because unlike radio, obviously Ofcom regulate radio, and always watching over them, whereas there's no regulation for podcasts whatsoever, so they can say whatever they want, they can swear, use profanities, so yeah, you can do whatever you want. And obviously they're easy to make, like I said, technology-wise, and also you can just sit at home and do it yourself, or get a team together and make it as good as possible, which is where the editing ties in. And also broad choices now is another very valuable aspect of podcasting, because you've got so many different things to choose from, loads of different genres and loads of different types of people, different types of presenters, which is another way of spawning job opportunities also. And obviously they're very time efficient. You're not tied down to any particular time. You can listen to them whenever you want. Whereas with like live radio, you'd have to listen to the show then and there. Whereas with a podcast, you can re-download it. Even with radio shows, a lot of people tend to record them, edit them, so they've just got the important bits, then upload it as a podcast, or just upload the whole thing as a podcast. Co-presence. I think people like Ricky Gervais have created a website in which listeners can email in and express their views on the page, do competitions. For instance, they had a audio contest where basically it was something that Carl Pilkington had said, and it was whoever could create the best remix of that and then send it into the Ricky Gervais show, and then they'd get a certain prize. And also the Ricky Gervais website sells different products like mugs and t-shirts in which they can make money from, as well as incorporating all the different listeners. So it's like kind of like a band of followers for that particular show. And then obviously adverts are rarely occur on podcasts because podcasts never really have any adverts because they're not live. Like for instance, if a radio show is live, they'll have adverts. There's nothing you can do about it. Whereas with a podcast, you can fast forward past it, or it's up to you then, because you can download it and you can then edit that podcast even more if you want, because you can download it and do whatever you want. So that's like another added incentive. People might get fed up with adverts on live radio, whereas with a podcast, you don't have to listen to them. You can fast forward past them. Sites that incorporate podcasting, obviously there's big ones like Podbean.com, TwitTV and Podomatic.com. Podbean.com basically goes, basically you can upload your podcast and so can anyone in the world. So people in Australia could upload them and you can listen to them. That's how broad it is. Millions of people upload their podcast to Podbean. There's like 3.5 million podcasts on there at the moment. Something like over 200 million views per day, downloads per day at least. Just shows how broad the market is for podcasting. And there's other ones like TwitTV, which kind of adds the incentive of a visual aid. So not only do you have to just listen to podcasts now, but you can also watch the presenters doing the show live, or you can just download it as a podcast. So that's another reason why TwitTV is also one for the future. Also running the site through sponsors, not like a commercial station. It's got sponsors. That's how it makes its money, and that's how they pay their presenters. And so many people are scoured through Podbean and TwitTV, and TwitTV say, "Oh, we liked you. Would you consider doing a piece for us on TwitTV?" Which is why it's ever changing. TwitTV, new personalities every day. So they must say, "Oh yeah, would you like to do a podcast for us?" Yes, no, and then they might go and not be there the next week. So it's forever changing. That's why I think it's certainly one for the future. And Podomatic.com is another one which has millions and millions of podcasts once again. And genres, different genres, because podcasting has lots of niche audiences. Podomatic has a nice list of different genres like sports, education, music, whatever you want to discuss, they'll have it on there because there's so many podcasts and so many different genres to choose from overall. So changing radio, it's forever changing, and podcasting is ever growing. So because of how easy it is to create a podcast and put it online, it's always changing. And Ricky Gervais created his own, started off with podcasts, and then decided to add the visual aid, sort of like TwitTV, with the animation that he's created. Instead of just filming himself in the studio like TwitTV had, he's got someone to do a animation of the three of them presenting in the studio rather than just filming them. So it's like an added incentive for the audience, so they've got something more to look at. It makes it more interesting for them. And it offers more options such as visual aids, so obviously audiovisual as I've got here. Not only do you have to listen to it, you can watch it if you want. You can minimise it and just listen to it like it's a normal radio show, or not. It's just like an added incentive which the listener might want. And obviously radio shows can be converted to podcast format. So if you think, oh yeah, well radio shows are live when they're first presented and it defeats the object of it, you're not tied down to having to listen to it then. You can record it, or someone will record it and upload it and change it to podcast format so those people can listen to it. Which is why it might be shunning radio out of the picture, kind of, because they're going to struggle to compete with that because they can listen to it whenever they want. The only thing that's keeping live radio alive, in my opinion, is the fact that they can do live news updates and travel updates, whereas podcasts can't because they're all pre-recorded. So that's the thing that I think will keep radio alive. The job opportunities. So I look at Podbean currently has 3,762,281 podcasts available for download, and I checked today at 12 AM 207,202,465 downloads just today. So that's how popular podcasts are nowadays, and obviously that's spawning job opportunities because those people could be potential job employers. You know, all the people that upload podcasts might listen to each other's and then find the best presenters and producers and say, oh, I liked what you did. Do you want to combine our expertise and create a podcast amongst it can become immensely popular? So it's just another way of making money and another way of spawning job opportunities. And then there's freelancing. I checked peopleperhour.com. Basically, you just leave a statement saying that I can create a radio script or do a news bed, and so if that's needed for your podcast, then you can go and buy it off them or bid on it. There are lots of different sites, and you can use them for your podcast. So that's the job opportunities. To conclude, I think podcasts are an essential part of the future. I think TwitTV, with its adverts being very animated and different, kind of shows how the future of radio might not just be based on producing and presenting. You need more expertise, such as knowing how to use Flash and new programs which are spawning all the time. So you need more qualifications almost to do a podcast. And also the internet is dominant, and therefore podcasts are going to be dominant as well. Because without the internet, I think that the world wouldn't be able to cope. So podcasts being on the internet, and that's how they're downloadable through the internet, they've got a massive market and people are going to continue to use them. And they're easy, efficient and cheap, so it has to succeed because they're so easy to make, easy to view, and it's just makes it so simple for everyone. So that concludes my presentations. Thank you very much for listening, and are there any questions? Okay. And there's my bibliography. Thanks very much for listening.